All right, for a quick review, you can put comments in your code in Java. If you start it with a // the comment lasts to the end of the line. If you start it with a /*, it lasts until the next //. And if you start it with a / followed by 2 stars, it's a javadoc comment. And javadoc comments should be placed above the class definition and above all public constructors and methods. What we discussed earlier is enough for most examples. If you go back to the example on best practices we discussed in the previous lecture, and you just get in the habit from the very beginning of your code development, whenever you have a class, a public constructor, or a public method, put at least brief javadoc documentation and flesh it out as you go along. That's enough. But in a few cases, it's worth knowing about some extra options and alternatives. So, javadoc is used to generate the online documentation not for end users, but for other developers on your team that are going to call or make use of your code. You build javadoc, as we saw from Eclipse, by going to the project menu and selecting Generate Javadoc, but it's also possible to build javadoc with a command line tool. And the Oracle homepage on javadoc is extremely useful and has a lot of examples and options and details. I highly recommend that you take a look at that. Okay, so there's some options that you can put inside of your comments. One of them is @author. If you put @author, then the comment that you put after that will appear in a special place, highlighted with a bullet in the javadoc documentation. You can also say version, so that if you have, version number 1, version number 2, version number 3, version number 4 of your class as you iterate over time, you can mark which version of it is, so that if someone looks at the documentation and it's version 3, and they look at the code and it's version 5, they realize that they're looking at out-of-date documentation. Param. Now this is a useful idea, but it's often used incorrectly. So @param can be used to say, all right, my method takes 2 arguments, x and y. And then I can define, well, what is x used for and what is y used for? But people frequently do this. Public void blah int x. And then they say @param, and then they say x is the x argument. Well, duh, I can see that by looking at the method definition. Tell me something that I don't know already. Javadoc already tells you the name of the argument. Tell me something more. What is it for? What units is it in? What happens if you pass in a negative number? So use @param if you're going to say something more useful than just repeating what the name of the variable is. Javadoc already will show the name of the variable. @return describes the return value of the method. Now often, that's essentially what the whole entire documentation is about. You say, this method computes the area of the circle. Well, you don't need an @return. You've already told them that it computes the area of the circle. But if you want to, kind of specifically break out the incoming arguments and the return value, and especially if you want to give something about the units or some exceptions, that's a useful place to put it. There's a lot of options that you can pass to javadoc if you run it on the command line. The most important one is link and link offline. This lets you link to the built-in standard normal Java API. So if your documentation is going to be used in a place where people have internet access, you can say -link, and then you point at the standard Java API. And so now, if your method that you wrote, getMessage, returns a string, and they click on string, it'll automatically show the string class in the standard Oracle Java documentation. But if you want your documentation to be available offline, you can't point at string and the online documentation, so you can download the standard Java API for all of Java, put it on your local system, and use the link offline argument. I think link is the most useful one, and I highly recommend that you use it, and I think it's underused. That way, your classes and the standard classes will kind of be all integrated, and people can discover how to use the project-specific classes and the standard classes in the same manner. Don't be scared by all of this. The important thing is use javadoc. Put javadoc comments, starting with 2 stars, above public classes, Above public constructors and above public methods, go to Eclipse and say project, the project menu, generate Java doc. That's the important thing. All of these options are something that you can keep in the back of your mind. Eventually, if you're an expert, you'll use some of them, but you shouldn't feel overwhelmed that you have to learn these in order to start using Java doc right off the bat.